This is Polymer Weekly, episode 593 for February 17th, 2021. Coming up on today's show, how do you handle going platonic? It's coming up on today's show. Hey everybody, this is your co-host Minx, here with my co-host Lusty Guy.
Happy and lucky to be here, as always. Hello everybody.
And you know what? This is an adult show. It's about really lascivious things like honesty and communication about sex and relationships. If you're under 18, please stop listening and visit scarletteen.com. Okay, now that that's out of the day, we got snow. Everybody gets snow. I get snow. You get snow. Everybody gets snow.
There was a lot of snow going around. The snow was not in the slightest monogamous, in fact, over this past weekend.
It was really slutty snow we had across the U.S.
It loving up on everybody.
Yeah.
Even the Texans. I mean, normally the Texans get left out of the snow stuff, but not this time.
You know, I grew up in Texas and it did snow. It just usually didn't snow until January, February, and we didn't get, more than 6 inches of accumulation was quite a lot. That being said, here in Seattle, I have to say it was damn near perfect. It snowed over a weekend, and apart from the essential workers, most of us didn't really have to go anywhere, so it was pretty easy to stay home. It was beautiful, white, fluffy snow. It was on the weekend. It was perfect for sledding. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. Our neighbors were skiing down the streets, sledding, snowboarding. I saw some snowshoers, and every single hill, which is basically all of Seattle, was turned into a sledding, skiing run. It was the true definition of a snow day. It was positively joyful, at least from my point of view.
We had a really pleasant snowstorm. It came on nice and gradual and slow. It built up over hours, and it melted gradually with no refreeze and no freezing rain, and only, like 3 days after. So really, we came out pretty well here. Pretty lucky, pretty thankful for that.
And our puppy, Baloo, had his first experience with snow.
Oh, yeah.
It was an absolute delight to watch. He loved it. We let him out in the backyard when there was about an inch or two of accumulation, and he stuck his nose in it and hoovered that sucker up like a coke fiend from the 80s.
He definitely had a little powder around his nose when he was done, and he would lift up his head and snort every once in a while and then go right back down and snoof his way through some more. It was adorable.
He would lick it and romp through it and then lick it and sniff it some more. It was really fun to watch. Now, that being said, this week, I've had a little more worry, a little more drama, because my family is in Texas, and I've been especially worried about my mom, who is 85 and just got out of heart surgery, and I haven't been able to get hold of her because the phone lines are down, the power is down, you have to boil water, everything's down. And I freaked out for a bit, but happily, my brothers have intermittent power. And so I've been able to text back and forth with them, and they have told me that they've connected with her. And I actually did just literally an hour ago finally get through to her on the phone.
So shout out to everybody in Texas. We hope you're all doing as well as you can. Best wishes you get through this as relatively unscathed as possible. And, hope for better days.
And to my friends in Chicago, man, I remember those days. A foot or two of snow, and am really glad I'm not shoveling that. And please stay safe. Anybody who's anywhere in the midst of this, please stay safe.
All right, children, pull up a little seat because we are going to talk politics, and this time U.S. history at the same time. But because history is an inherently boring topic, we'll start out right here in the here and now with that common idea that you all have heard here in the U.S. about how we were founded by the pilgrims who came over on the Mayflower to escape religious persecution and find a place where they could practice their religion freely. Right? That's the story that we're told. Yeah, it's bullshit. So let's break it down. Here's what's true. We go back to the Pilgrims in England, and they were, in fact, being persecuted by the English religious power structure. It was not a happy place for them. So they did, in fact, by the way, that sigh was not Minx being bored with me. That was the dog at the foot of the bed who heaved a big sigh. Me, that's not Minx, if you heard it. In any case.
This is Minx.
Yeah, see, that's Minx. So the Pilgrims did, in fact, decamp England and leave fleeing religious persecution. They just didn't come to the New World. They went to Amsterdam, which, by the way, is a really good place for all reasonable people to go. So they went to Amsterdam and they kind of settled in. They spent a year or 3 there and in fact then moved from Amsterdam to Leiden in what was then the newly independent Spanish territories, the Dutch lowlands, what would become the Netherlands. And here's the thing. They faced no religious persecution while they were there because it's the Dutch. They're okay. Well, for their time and continue to this day, pretty darn tolerant of different religious views. And that tolerance bothered the Pilgrims. They noticed they spent 10 years here, by the way. It's not something where they, just kind of blew through for a month. They spent 10 years and even ran local people for local political office, trying to infuse some more morality in their sense of religion into the local government. And they were rebuffed. How do you say that? Rebuffed. Thank you. It didn't work because, the Dutch were not wanting to have the Pilgrims introduce their religion to their governmental structure. So after 10 years and experiencing everything that immigrants experience, and seeing their children, some of them, grow up and not quite be as fully in the Pilgrim way as they might like.
You mean they were tolerant of other religions?
Maybe.
Gasp.
Could have been. That's when they decided to come to the New World. Not because they were fleeing religious persecution. They had done that when they left England. But because they wanted to establish religious persecution. They wanted to be able to put together a government where membership in the official church was required to be part of the government. That's just true. So they got together on the Mayflower and they came over and established a place where not only were they safe to be Puritans, but, the Pilgrims, not the Puritans, the Pilgrims. Were they safe to be Pilgrims? Anybody that wasn't a Pilgrim wasn't so safe. That was their goal. In fact, that was the goal for the founders of most of the original first 13 colonies. They were all different religious sects that didn't fit in or couldn't get everybody else to listen to them. And so they came over here to establish a place where their religion would rule. Now, Pennsylvania is the exception. Pennsylvania, in fact, was a counter-reaction to that. But let's just put that one aside for the moment. The rest of them pretty much had official churches that you had to be members of in order to be a member of the state government. And in fact, a primary reason why the U.S. federal government forbade any mandatory requirement in a church to hold government office was because they knew no one could agree on what church it would be. Every state would want their church to be the church that was required, not the others. Now, when you think about American history and American behavior, imagine what it means that we tell ourselves that the Pilgrims came here because they were fleeing religious persecution, when the reality is they came here to establish religious persecution. There's something to learn there about the U.S. character. And thank you for your stop in this week at Lusty Guy's Politics Corner.
And if you don't believe Lusty Guy, not that anything he ever says is not very well researched, but there is a TV series produced by the BBC called Stephen Fry in America, where he drives a black cab around America. And he actually does do an episode on that exact idea, that the Pilgrims came here not to flee religious persecution, but to establish religious persecution of those who did not agree with them. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And if you do have questions, comments, or feedback, political, historical, or otherwise, you can call us at 802-505-POLY or email polyweekly@gmail.com and attach an MP3 file with your questions or comments. If you'd like to book us or anything that involves a calendar, email lustyguy@polyweekly.com.
All right, now for the actual main topic of the show. How do you handle a relationship going platonic? We got a letter from Matt, and it's a fairly long letter. I'm going to try to summarize it. And the very short summary is this. Matt had a pre-existing relationship with AJ. Emma fell into that relationship. Emma then decides that she needs to take some time off and focus on her and not have a relationship, but she's willing to be platonic friends. Matt is trying to figure out how to process that and what to do. That's the short version.
What this basically boils down to is unrequited love, right? It sounds like that's what Matt is describing. And most of us have to deal with that at some point in our lives. We want a relationship and someone else doesn't or can't, and it sucks, and it happens. Here's the thing, though. When you decide to go platonic, or when any person in a relationship decides that for their own health or for whatever reason, they need to change the nature of that relationship, you have to decide what you are going to do with your own feelings. You can try to hold on to those feelings and pine for her while everything is on hold, which I have never found to be a terribly pragmatic solution. Or basically you can treat it mentally and emotionally as a breakup and acknowledge that, the relationship as you knew it is no longer there. And basically emotionally and mentally in yourself, do the hard work of processing the relationship. I actually wrote down in my notes the phrase getting over, but I hate that because nobody really gets over anything. We integrate our experiences into our emotions and into our lives. So you do the hard work of integrating that past relationship into yourself and your emotions. And then your challenge is if and when that relationship changes, if Emma comes back and says, hey, I've done a good job processing and I'd like to try and start things up again. The only really important thing is to say you can't really pick up where you left off. As well as I do, you can't just turn emotions off and turn them back on. You may be in a different place after that processing, and after a month or a year or however long it is, you may not be in a place where you are good to pick things back up. So to get back to my first point, this is unrequited love. There's not much you can do about it except to decide on what your reaction to it is and heal and integrate as best you can. And to the extent that's possible, be your best self. And if things do happen so that you can start up a new relationship again, you're as happy and healthy as possible to pursue that.
Okay, Matt. So I'm going to kind of deal with this at 2 or 3 different levels. And we'll start out at the very top level and just answer your fucking question, right? Which is, what do I do? What you do is, like Minx said, you accept this is a breakup. That's what it is. When you have a relationship, I know there's going to be a bunch of people out there saying, it's not all about the sex. It's not all about sex. You're overemphasizing the sex. Yeah, I know, but that's my nature. I like sex. It's also true.
It's true. He does.
It's true. It's also true that when you have a relationship that has started out and formed as a sexual relationship and that element goes away, you need to recreate that relationship from sex, just as you would if any other major relationship factor went away. You're basically breaking up. And what I always tell people when they break up is take some time off. So instead of trying to be there and be the nice guy and be supportive and be around should she change her mind, and we're going to talk about all these things in a little bit, just accept the breakup and say to Emma, okay, I get it. Now, what I need is some time off, and take some weeks, 3, 4, 6 weeks where you don't have contact, where you actually spend some time to heal and integrate the lessons that you learned from your experience and think about what is best for you and what you want outside of the input and the desire and the attempt to be the right, nice person and maintain a relationship with them. Put yourself first and take some time off to heal. After that period, should the two of you want to recreate some relationship, by all means do, platonic or otherwise, and probably platonic, and that's fine. But to try to recreate that relationship while you're healing from the loss of the last one is to make things a lot more difficult than they need to be. Now I want to center in on the next couple of levels. While you're taking that time off, I want to invite you, Matt, to consider some kind of perhaps less than positive truths about yourself. Now, I might be completely off base. And this is one of those situations where the readers are a little bit of a disadvantage because you guys don't get to read the entire email that came in that we did. And so I'm going to read you some direct quotes that kind of represent a pattern, Matt, that I'm seeing in your letter that you wrote. You wrote that things have been going really well. You guys have been talking. At the beginning of the month, Emma started having some problems. It's in your long-distance relationship. I took time to hear her and understand her and completely supported her with motivation and support to get through it. This went on for a while with tons of check-ins and talks about how she's doing and what I could do to help her through it. She often didn't know I could help much, so I continued with my support to the best that I could, but felt really helpless. Later on, when you give you the conversation where she says she wants to go platonic, you write, you were understanding of her need for that. You write about how that you would be there for her whether or not she decided that she wanted to have a sexual relationship, and that you've been waiting ever since. You write about how you're giving her the time and space she needs to figure herself out, like she said, but really don't know how to move forward. So what I'm seeing here is a consistent pattern of you saying, hey, I'm doing the right thing. I'm a nice guy. Why is the right thing not happening after that? Where is my return for being a nice guy? There isn't one. And I see an implied transactional assumption in the relationship. And I see a focus on how what you're doing is right. And I see a little bit of a white knight behavior. I'm here going to save her. I'm going to make sure and provide the support. Okay, fuck that. Put yourself first, Matt. You're in a situation where you don't have a requited amount of love and interest, and you're just going to hurt everybody involved by trying to make sure that you are the right nice guy all the time. It's called white knighting. Put yourself first. You're not happy if you're not having a sexual relationship. Stop hitting yourself with that frying pan. Okay?
Now, what's interesting about this is that I read this letter several times and I never got that interpretation, which is why I'm really happy that we have co-hosts and that there's two of us, because we looked at the same letter through a really different lens. I looked at those details about here's what I did as providing the level of detail so that we wouldn't then come back and give him the advice of, oh, did you listen to her? Oh, did you support her? Oh, did you give her room? That he was just providing the details to say, kind of like when you call into support and you say, I turned it off and back on, and I rebooted this, and I unplugged that, and it still doesn't work. But I think it's interesting that you and I interpreted those details differently, and who knows who's right? Maybe somewhere in between. But I love that we have the different perspectives.
And I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm not sure that I am. But when I see somebody who consistently talks only about how they did everything right, and they were being the supportive thing in the face of all of this bad stuff coming from their partner in need, I'm a little cynical.
I know you are, and cynical. I love you for it. And here's the truth about this anyway. Even if this is not true of Matt, I bet there's somebody listening for whom this is hitting a little bit of a nerve. So hopefully it's helpful to other folks, even if it's not the case with Matt.
Well, Matt, I suggest you consider it strongly while you're taking your break from Emma. The other thing that I'd like you to consider strongly while you're taking your break from Emma is this notion that you and AJ have that you will wait for Emma to come around. Another way to phrase that is you can be what she needs to change. You can be what will change her. This is prototypically seen with women, with men, when women say, I can change him. I can make him a better husband. I can make him a better partner. Down that way, madness lies. If your relationship is one in which you're waiting for Emma to be something different, you're doing everybody a disservice. When you recreate that relationship with Emma, if you are not happy, all of you, with as it is at that moment, then readjust. Don't sit around and try to change her. Don't wait for her to decide that she wants to sleep with you again. Accept her as she is in that moment with no expectation of anything happening in the future other than good behavior and, being treated with respect and things. Or don't play the game because you're setting everybody up for failure and heartache. So the things I would tell you is take a break. During that break, consider to stop waiting for people and stop trying to change them, accept them as they are, and consider if you aren't white knighting a little bit here. There might be something valuable for you to learn in those considerations.
Yeah, what I found interesting about that idea of waiting, and I touched on it in my comments earlier, is that you don't know who you and AJ are going to develop into being in the weeks or months or longer that you're waiting. So it seems like a kind thing to say, like, oh, we'll wait for you, as in we're not going to pressure you to make a yes or no decision now. But the truth is, you don't know if in the weeks or months or years, if or when Emma does come back into the fray, that you're going to be in a place where a healthy relationship can be reconstructed with her. I think it's very kind, and I give you credit for this. I think it's very kind to say, you know what, we're here if you need us. But the truth is, you don't really know for sure if you and AJ are going to be ready for a relationship if and when Emma does come back.
Just lost us a listener.
If you have thoughts on what Matt should or shouldn't do, or comments on what we just said, you can join our community on Facebook at facebook.com/polyweekly and leave a comment on this episode topic. Or you can tweet us at polyweekly or at cunning.minx. Follow me on Instagram at cunning.minx. Yeah, I still only have one video on TikTok. I'm still getting the hang of that.
And this week's feedback comes in a audio format.
Hi, Jonathan here. I turned off episode 590 at the 9-minute mark to call in to say, yes, 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 yes. I'm a diehard contrarian that for years loved to wave the, they're all the same and you're being fooled flag. It feels good, it makes you feel smart, and it's really, really, really wrong. The last 4 years in the U.S. should have made it clear to everyone that there are significant differences between the right and the left. And a right-wing government has dire consequences for a lot of people. Everyone, actually, if you consider the pandemic and climate change. Because Democrats and Republicans are all the same attitude. It's common in a lot of circles I've been a part of. And it needs to be shouted down wherever it manifests. Thank you for making this a part of your politics corner. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Many thanks. As the saying goes, great minds work alike, and so do ours.
I thought that was a very nice bit of feedback for your politics corner.
I'll take it.
It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by fubbly polyamorists everywhere.
This week's Happy Poly Moment is from R, who writes in to say, I suffer from anxiety and am new to poly, which makes for a very interesting combination. I've been able to multiple times redirect my anxiety and process it in a healthy way by listening to episodes that relate directly to my fear du jour. Now to the Happy Poly Moment. My partner T, he, him, and I, she, her, have recently started living together. T has years of poly relationship experience and has been amazingly supportive and patient while I learn. We're both dating separately and don't have any other serious partners yet. T asked if I would be comfortable with his having a date over to our place for the first time. I asked for time to process, but quickly realized the anxiety I was expecting didn't come. We talked about logistics and then about our relationship, and I've never felt more trusted and loved. I've been open to poly from the beginning, but had serious doubts that my anxiety wouldn't make me too unhappy to pursue this relationship style long term. Talking last night with T was the first time I really believe that I'm strong enough to pursue polyamory in a happy and healthy way. Big thanks to you and to my amazing partner. Well, R, I want to give you credit because sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for we don't celebrate those positive moments when we actually feel like we're growing and taking a step forward and when the anxiety doesn't get the best of us. We forget to celebrate that sometime and put like a little tick in the win column, in the we did this right, in a this is healthy column. So kudos to you for doing that.
Hey, Minx, you remember Southwest Love Fest 2018?
I do. It was so nice and warm.
Of course. Yeah, really, right? Back when there was still sun. Of course you remember. Do you remember Tammy?
I do.
Tammy was incredible. And
She
you know
was
what was
awesome.
even better than Tammy? Who was even better than Tammy?
Jenn and Catherine?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Jenn and Catherine were just astounding. And the fact that they were all together, like as a couple, I mean, that's just like something right with the universe.
I think it's a throuple.
Is it a throuple? I think some people don't like that term. Whatever. They're all in a relationship. And as a matter of fact, they are so cool that Tammy asked us to give a little shout out and happy anniversary to Jenn and Catherine since they can't be together in the time of COVID.
3 years ago, their anniversary is February 16th, so just a day or two ago. So happy anniversary, Tammy, Jenn, and Catherine.
And thanks for listening.
And a big thanks to our polyweekly playmates for their donations this week. We're a free resource. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people navigate their introduction to and continued success with polyamory. And your donations keep this podcast free for everyone inside and outside the community. Can't donate? Consider writing us a review on Apple Podcasts or just tell a friend. Thanks everyone for listening. And remember,
it's not all about the sex. I love you.
You sound like a fucking moron.
Fix it in post.
I know. I'm like, God, I'm going to have to cut so much of that out.